I am creating this video to explain to people who are confused about why Russia and Ukraine are fighting for about 2 years now. The fight is very bloody and bitter between these two brother countries. If you follow the history of these two countries, you will see that they are actually the same. They were artificially divided. But that is not why I am here today. Why I'm here is, why is Russia and Ukraine in this bitter and bloody battle? Now, you may have heard of the term Soviet Union. Soviet Union used to be the biggest country in the world with about 14 republics. And at the top of Soviet Union was Russia. Russia was actually in the leadership of the Soviet Union. And Ukraine was even ranked the second most powerful in the Soviet Union. Now, the Soviet Union had one power, one advantage. It had the highest reserve of oil and gas in the world. Now, fast forward to when the Soviet Union broke into 14 different countries. When they broke into 14 different countries, Russia still retained the largest landmass in the Soviet Union after it got broken. And Russia, will I say, God has favored Russia with a geography or a geographical space that is such that they still retain the largest quantity of gas in the world, a place known as Siberia. Now, after the fall of the Soviet Union, countries like Germany, they no longer saw any reason to go for hostile international or foreign policies with Russia and decided to go into partnership. And that's why the Russian petrochemical industry, as at that time, decided to help Russia to harness that gas potential in Siberia and supply them with thick oil pipes, which they use in connecting in creating a pipeline from Siberia to Germany. Now, during the Soviet Union, a good chunk of the pipelines in the Soviet Union that moves oil and gas from Soviet Union to other countries passed through Ukraine. When Russia now became a federation, Russia asked Ukraine to hand over those pipelines that Russia built, Soviet Union built. Ukraine resisted heavily. Now, but that's by the way. Over time, Germany and many other countries in Europe became heavily dependent on Russian oil and gas. And a particular issue happened between Russia and Ukraine because after the fall of the Soviet Union, Russia still supplied Ukraine with gas. But a major number of pipelines passes through Ukraine into European countries. So I believe that there was a beef somehow for Ukraine refusing to hand over those Soviet pipelines to Russia. And along the line, there was an increase in the price of gas. In fact, Russia suspended the flow of gas to Ukraine for a certain period. That was a very short period of time. And because Russia halted that flow of gas, it also affected the quantity of gas that goes to other countries in Europe. During that period, many European countries had a huge power cut. And that actually sent a shockwave to Europe. And then the Europeans began to think that if they will allow the way we are going, it's like we are at the mercy of Russians. Sorry, I just have to go to put off something. We are at the mercy of the Russians. And if we don't do something about it, one day we may wake up and realize that Russia can just turn off the gas and then we will just be running helter-skelter. So, but that's by the way. Now, it is not that 100% of gas and energy from that Europe uses all come from Russia, but over 40% is from Russia, oil and gas. Now, another country that was served like an alternative is Norway. Norway is second to Russia, but Norway do not have the kind of capacity to produce the quantity that Europe needs. So apart from that oil and gas, they get some from Norway. Some still have maybe their coal mines, some still use nuclear power. But because of what happened in Japan after there was an earthquake that exploded some of their nuclear reactors that polluted a great portion of their environment, countries like Germany started thinking of decommissioning their nuclear reactors so that what happened in Germany will not happen to them, and then decided to go for alternative, which is Russian oil and gas. But now, Russian gas, they depend heavily on Russian gas. And you know, historically, Russia and Germany have always had issues one way or the other. So the Germans are still very, very conscious of that, even though we have been having relative peace and business relationship. But something happened that which I strongly believe broke the camel's back. There was a discovery, a heavy discovery in Ukraine of huge quantity of gas in two places in Ukraine. One is a place known as Crimea. The other is a place known as Donetsk. And it is believed that if the potential of that gas is harnessed and pipelines built from Ukraine connecting to Europe, in fact, the gas reserve discovered in those places is only second to Russia. It is only Russia that have a higher quantity of gas than the combination of gas in Donetsk and Crimea in the world. So which means with this discovery, Ukraine now stands to be second to Russia. And that poses a very huge problem for Russia, because even after the fall of the Soviet Union, just like China is seeing Taiwan as part of China, Russia is still seeing Ukraine as part of Russia. So if the gas potential of Ukraine is harnessed, it will quickly make Russia insignificant before Ukraine, because Ukraine will have enough money to build both military and nuclear power to resist Russia. But see where the whole thing twisted. Now, Russia was still, by the way, observing what is happening. But you know, the West, before you know it, having discovered this quantity of gas in Ukraine, they now came, BP, British Petroleum, came and invested $10 billion to harness the gas. Shell came, invested $10 billion to harness the gas. They started investing billions to build infrastructure that will connect Ukraine down to other European countries, so that there will be an alternative gas to Russia. Now, Russia observing the thing, because at that particular time, I didn't really cram the man's name. The current president or prime minister of Ukraine, the leader of Ukraine then, was pro-Russian. And when there was this deal that European Union brought to Ukraine, there was this deal that Ukraine was supposed to sign. Just few hours to signing of that deal, Russia proposed to that pro-Russian leader in Ukraine that they are going to give them 30% tax cuts on their gas they supply to Ukraine, and will invest $15 billion. And just few hours to signing that deal with Europe, that pro-Russian leader cancelled that deal and accepted that of Russia. Immediately he accepted that of Russia, the Ukrainians became very angry, and there was a riot in the whole of Ukraine. In fact, it was so violent that that leader of Ukraine had to run away and go to take asylum in Russia. And they now organized an election, and a president that was now opposed to Russia now came up. And Russia saw that as a kind of intimidation from the West, because Russia believed that all this manipulation was done by the West to push out someone that backed their own interests in Ukraine and then put their own stooge in Ukraine that will support the harnessing of those oil and then only push anti-Russian policies. This was the straw that broke the camel's back, and this was what angered the Kremlin in Russia and said, since Ukraine have decided to side with their enemies so that to bring down their power on the global scene, they are going to show them. Now, remember that after the fall of the Soviet Union, apart from Russia, we have a large number of Russians in many Soviet countries. A country like Kazakhstan, 25% of the population of Kazakhstan are Russians. We have Russians in Georgia. We have Russians in Ukraine. And that Crimea, where that gas was discovered, Russia claim that we have a good number of Russians there, and the interests of Russians will not be protected. We all know that it's not really because of the Russians, it's because of the gas in Crimea and in Donetsk. That is why Russia now launched the first invasion in Ukraine. If you check the two places, first of all, Russia annexed Crimea that have large gas, and then sponsored a revolt in Donetsk region, which is close to Donbass, where we have that gas. So invariably cutting off Ukraine from any possibility of harnessing potential. So I believe this is one of the things that angered some people in Ukraine. That anger is what I believe this current president came with and decided that they are going to do what? Liberate those regions, which now make Russia to decide this time around not just to take those places where there are gases, but to also take places that will hinder any further attempt by Ukraine to connect with the West. If you check I'll bring the map later. The places that Russia is launching invasions, like some of the places where you can have access to the sea are, okay, I think the Black Sea. I will bring the details later. These are places that after this war ends and Russia is in control of those places, Ukraine will effectively end up a landlocked nation, and all those potential in Ukraine will now be transferred to Russia. So this war is about oil and gas. Russia does not want to lose its developing power. And remember, Putin was part of the KGB of the former Soviet Union, and Putin says one of the biggest regrets is the fall of the Soviet Union. One of his goals is to actually take Russia back to that Soviet era status of power, and anything that will want to make Ukraine, who is actually, they are seen as their junior twin brother, to now become a puppet to the West, will eventually neutralize that possibility. So this war is a war of energy. Germany, in collaboration with America, wants that gas in Crimea and Donetsk, using Ukraine as a medium to fight Russia, and Russia is using what it has to make sure that it keeps control of that place so that it can use the leverage of oil and gas to continue to stake its claim in the global world power. I believe we now know why this fight is on. Now, oil and gas, they cause this fight, nothing else. Thank you.